Greetings, fellow Octopathians. Octopath Traveler lore class is back in session. Today, we will be covering one of my absolute favorite stories from the game, the tale of Sir Olberic Eisenberg, the Unbending Blade. If any of you watch the Let's Play series I've done in Octopath Traveler, you would know the copious amounts of joy that this character's story brings to me, and just his character in general. It probably goes without saying it gives me great joy to bring this lore video to you all today, so let us not waste any more time. Onward to the story of Olberic Eisenberg. Enjoy. Olberic's story begins 8 years before the beginning of Octopath Traveler. Olberic is a sworn knight of Hornburg, a kingdom in the Highlands with a storied history and traditions that span back many centuries to its founder, King Beowulf. There are so many stories of Hornburg that we could tell, in fact, that those would be best saved for a potential video in the future. But for the purposes of Olberic's story today, there's 2 pieces of history from Hornburg we should keep in mind. First, all the arcane rites and rituals contained within the tome from the far reaches of hell were discovered and documented here in Hornburg. In fact, From the Far Reaches of Hell was written in High Hornburgian, the ancient language of Hornburg. And second, many quests in Octopath Traveler reference that the royal family of Hornburg has ties to the Order of the Sacred Flame, and that they have been guarding deep, dark secrets within their kingdom. These secrets stretch all the way back to when Alfred defeated Galdera and he was sealed in the Afterworld. The royal family has guarded these secrets for so long, in fact, that the current family under King Alfred is not even fully aware of what they're guarding anymore. However, it is these ancient and dark secrets that serve as the impetus for Olberic's story. When Olberic's story begins, Hornburg is under siege from a massive army of sellswords. While the employer of these sellswords is unknown at this point in the story, their goal is to destroy the Kingdom of Hornburg and loot its precious lost treasures. To counter the invading threat, Olberic, who has served as one of King Alfred's retainers, now takes up the mantle of General of Hornburg's armies. In Olberic's opening scene, we see where Olberic earned his title as the Unbending Blade, as he takes on a score of sellswords by himself without backup. After a short display of Olberic's unparalleled skill with a sword, the sellswords are forced into retreat as a contingent backup unit from the king's camp arrives. After their current position is secured, Olberic has a brief discussion with another of the Knights of Hornburg. They comment on how well the skirmish is going and that the sellswords are falling back in retreat. However, Olberic shows concern when he says that no orders have been received from the crown as of late, and that he wishes to investigate. Returning to the king's camp, Olberic finds that his fears were not unfounded, as all the soldiers in the camp have been slaughtered. Aghast at the horrific sight, Olberic begins to question where King Alfred and his other retainer, Sir Erhardt the Blazing Blade, are. Olberic approaches the king's tent and finds himself in disbelief. King Alfred is on his knees in front of Sir Erhardt, and in the ultimate act of betrayal, Erhardt strikes down King Alfred right before Olberic. Olberic demands to know what madness has overtaken Erhardt, though Erhardt claims it is not madness, but he can call it treachery if he wishes. As Olberic readies his sword to duel Erhardt to punish him for his treachery, Erhardt announces that he had been saving one secret technique for this very day, the very day that he knew would come eventually. The twin blades of Hornburg cross swords, and Olberic ultimately loses the duel. With his treachery complete, Erhardt flees the battlefield, leaving a badly wounded Olberic to die. And without a king to lead them, the knights and armies of Hornburg fall into chaos, and the kingdom quickly falls to ruin. Unable to suffer the shame of losing his liege and purpose in life, he exiles himself to the outskirts of the Highlands, to the town of Cobbleston. The people of Cobbleston kindly open their doors to Olberic, and he assumes the new identity of Berg, the Hedge Knight, and serves as a man-at-arms for the village. For 8 years, Olberic protects Cobbleston from brigands and other threats that may befall it, and he also trains the young men of the village in the arts of war so that they may defend the village in his absence one day. Despite the good work that he has done in Cobbleston for its people, his own soul is plagued day in and day out by the loss of his purpose in life and the loss of his liege. Day after day, night after night, Olberic cannot resolve the conflict that is within his soul. That is, until one day, when a new group of brigands arrive in Cobbleston and begin causing trouble.
It just so happens to be a present from an old friend.
Always the same dream.
When Chapter 1 begins, Olberic wakes up from a recurring nightmare that he's been having, where he's being forced to relive the death of King Alfred over and over again, and the betrayal of his best friend Erhardt. Depressed that he cannot seem to banish these nightmares, he continues to brood in his bed for a short time, until there is a knock at his door. Without looking, Olberic immediately identifies the person knocking as the young boy, Philip. Philip enters Olberic's home, and gives Olberic the news that the headman of Cobbleston is looking for him, and that he should go see him at once. Olberic thanks Philip for delivering the message, and tells him to go to the headman and tell him that he'll be with him shortly. Once Philip leaves the house, Olberic states that it's a new day and that he's done enough brooding for now, and it's time to get to work. As Olberic exits his house, he is greeted by two of the watchmen of the village. Olberic asks why the patrols appear to have been doubled throughout the village all of a sudden. The two watchmen reply that brigands have been spotted in the hills of late, and that a merchant had just recently been killed for his coin purse, so as a precautionary measure the headman doubled up patrols. Olberic thanks the watchman for the information and proceeds to the town square where he meets with the headman. The headman informs Olberic that they've been having trouble with a new group of brigands that have nestled in the hills of late. The villagers have been unable to collect firewood, and they also cannot check the animal traps for food. Olberic demands to know where the new thieves' den is. However, the headman says he has a team searching for it at the moment. So he suggests in the meantime that he puts the watchmen through their drills. As the headman fetches the two watchmen, Olberic has a conversation with Philip's mother, where Philip's mother believes that Philip has come of the age that he needs a father figure and a role model. So she asks Olberic if she would allow Philip to apprentice under him, that he may become a soldier or a knight someday and protect the village. Olberic agrees to do so, just as the two watchmen are brought before him. Olberic proceeds to spar with both of the watchmen, and he points out their weaknesses to them. One is too hesitant and too defensive, while the other one is too brazen and willing to attack viciously, leaving himself open to counterattacks. Olberic counsels that if the two were to fight together, they could cover for each other's weaknesses and be a formidable fighting force. The two boys take the advice to heart, and they resume their patrols. As the watchmen leave, Philip approaches Olberic and demands to have his own training session. However, Olberic says that it's not time yet for Philip to learn how to spar with him, as Philip has not perfected his form just yet. However, he assures Philip that his time will come. However, this training session ends all too soon, as brigands attack the north end of Cobbleston. The two watchmen immediately put Olberic's counsel to work, and they manage to successfully hold off the brigands from entering the town. Olberic then arrives on the scene, ordering the two watchmen to step back while he deals with the brigands. After a brief battle, the brigands are forced into retreat, and they promise that they shall return after they inform their boss of what's just happened. However, as this group of brigands retreats, a second group of brigands manages to sneak into the south side of Cobbleston and kidnap young Philip, taking him away to their den. Olberic is now ashamed that he's allowed the brigands to kidnap Philip, just as he agreed to apprentice him. So Olberic volunteers to attack the thieves' den, alone. The headman reluctantly allows Olberic to take on the task, and informs him that his search team has found the thieves' den in the hills just north of Cobbleston. Not tarrying a single moment, Olberic travels to the northern hills above Cobbleston. As Olberic approaches the brigands' den, he finds that a well-stocked lookout force has been established just outside the entrance. However, the brigands are no match for the Unbending Blade, and he quickly swats them to the side and enters the den. In the back of the den, the brigands are teasing Philip after he makes the assertion that Olberic will eventually arrive and kill them all. The brigands then proceed to laugh like a bunch of hyenas at the boy. However, their boss Gaston insists that they shut up, and immediately begins sharpening their stabbers. The brigands are in shock as to why Gaston is being so serious all of a sudden, but the conversation quickly turns as Gaston offers a place amongst their side to Philip. Philip quickly rebuffs Gaston's offer, saying that he's too good for banditry. Gaston takes a quick moment to laugh at Philip's stoicism on the matter, however he is quickly silenced by the appearance of Olberic. Upon seeing his mentor, Philip quickly runs behind Olberic for safety. Gaston takes a brief moment to laugh at the sudden change of events, but then swiftly attacks Olberic. Olberic blocks the strike and quickly notes that Gaston is no ordinary thief. But on the other hand, Gaston notes that Olberic is no common hedge knight either. However, Olberic begins to inspect Gaston's sword, and he recognizes it as a sword from 8 years ago. The sword once belonged to Erhardt, the Kingslayer. Olberic demands of Gaston to tell him where he got that sword, but Gaston asserts that if he wishes to ask questions like that, he must defeat him in combat first. So, accepting Gaston's challenge, Olberic and Gaston duel. However, the duel does not last long as Gaston and a few of his minions are quickly overpowered by Olberic. After the duel, Gaston surmises Olberic's true identity as Olberic Eisenberg, the Unbending Blade of Hornburg, much to the shock of his minions. However, as promised, Gaston agrees to answer Olberic's questions about Erhardt and where he got the sword. Gaston explains that he was part of a mercenary band that formed just after the fall of Hornburg. It was comprised of himself, Erhardt, and Gustav, the Black Knight. Erhardt trained both Gaston and Gustav in the ways of combat, and he gifted his sword to Gaston. However, after a time, the mercenary band broke up and each of the men went their separate ways. Gaston could no longer find honest work, so he turned to banditry. At this point, though, he counsels Olberic that if he wishes to find Erhardt, he should seek out Gustav, the Black Knight in Victor's Hollow, as he may know where Erhardt is. In exchange for the information and Gaston's brief moment of honorableness, Olberic agrees to spare both Gaston's life and those of his brigands, in exchange for spending time in the Cobbleston gallows as atonement for their deeds. As the watchmen of Cobbleston arrive to take the brigands to the gallows, Olberic knows what his new mission in life must be. He must seek out Erhardt, the Kingslayer, the man who ruined his life, took away his liege, and was responsible for destroying his home kingdom. Olberic dons his old knight's attire and begins to set out. However, on his way out, he is met by the villagers of Cobbleston, who wish him good tidings on his journey and that he come back safely. As the going away party nears its end, Philip unexpectedly appears behind Olberic and strikes him in the back. Olberic shrugs off the blow, saying the boy is getting strong. Philip announces that while Olberic is gone, he will be training every single day to be ready for when he returns so that he may continue his apprenticeship. And Olberic says that he is looking forward to it. And with that, Olberic leaves Cobbleston to begin his journey of truth and vengeance. Along the road to Victor's Hollow, Olberic meets up with the other 7 protagonists who all pledge their knowledge, skills, and weapons to his journey for truth. And days and moons pass, and Olberic arrives in Victor's Hollow, Jewel of the Woodlands.
A deal's a deal. You want to find Erhardt, and I'll honor my side of the bargain.
Upon walking into Victor's Hollow, Olberic notices that there's a major commotion going on in the main plaza. A large contingent of the citizenry of Victor's Hollow are gathered around a barker who is advertising the main event of the Warriors' Tourney to be held in the arena nearby. As part of his advertising, he talks about the reigning champion for 4 years now, Archibald the Crusher, and the would-be contender that might topple him, Gustav the Black Knight. Upon hearing Gustav's name, Olberic approaches the barker and asks directly if there is any way that he can speak with Gustav directly. The barker retorts to Olberic to buy a ticket to the Warriors' Tourney and see if Gustav will speak to him there. This is not the response that Olberic wanted, but he thanks the barker regardless and goes on his way. As they're walking away, Cyrus stops Olberic to comment on the history of the arena. Apparently it was once historically a penal circus, where prisoners were made to fight in a blood sport to the death for their own survival. However, after the prison was closed down, the prison was retrofitted into an arena where warriors from the land over come to fight in honorable combat. Cyrus still thinks it's appalling that they're still holding such a blood sport in this day and age, but Olberic points out that it is still honorable combat and is done by free men, not prisoners. As Olberic walks into the south end of town trying to find another way that he can meet with Gustav, he eyes what appears to be a ruffian in the corner near the inn, and assumes that the man has violent intent. And it is at this point where a normal person would just try to walk away from such a man. Olberic, being the badass he is, has this to say.
State your business, and if it's violence you seek, know that you shall have it.
That is a savage call-out right there. My goodness. If only we could all just be an ounce of the man that Olberic is. But I digress. After being called out, the mysterious figure approaches Olberic and takes quick measure of him, stating that he definitely knows how to use a sword. Olberic is slightly perplexed by this statement, but it is quickly resolved when another person comes out from behind the inn. This woman's name is Cecily, and she's been looking for a fighter to enter into the Warriors' Tourney under her banners. The man with ill intent in his eyes, as Olberic stated, is named Ned. He was originally going to be Cecily's pick to send into the Warriors' Tourney, but he was injured at some point in the past. Cecily tells Olberic that she watched him ask questions about Gustav to the barker in the plaza, and she tells him that were he an old friend of Gustav, it would be a lot easier to speak with him, but since Gustav most likely will not be anticipating his arrival, the only way to get his attention is to fight in the Warriors' Tourney. Olberic inquires how he can even enter the Warriors' Tourney after the preliminary rounds have already been held, but Cecily already has a solution. One of the main rules of Victor's Hollow is that might is right, so all Olberic has to do is defeat one of the other champions in public combat and he can take their place in the Warriors' Tourney. It is here that Cecily strikes a deal with Olberic. Fight under her banners for a chance to talk with Gustav, and she'll reap the rewards of prize money that he earns. Seeing as how both parties benefit out of this transaction, Olberic agrees to Cecily's offer. With the deal struck, Cecily asks what name he shall enter the Warriors' Tourney with, and he responds, "My own." Immediately, Ned recognizes him as the Unbending Blade of Hornburg, and Cecily is thrilled that she has someone famous to be fighting for her. With the deal struck, Olberic sets about trying to get one of the champions' attention by dueling some local ruffians and loudmouths. It doesn't take long before Olberic attracts the attention of one of the 8 champions, Victorino, the Buccaneer's Bane. Victorino calls out Olberic and wants to have a public duel with him in front of the inn. However, Cecily disagrees with this arrangement as they should have far more witnesses for their fight, so she suggests going to the public plaza just outside the arena. Both warriors agree to this arrangement and they head to the plaza where their duel begins. However, this duel is not evenly matched as Victorino is quick to call in some lackeys of his for support. To even the odds, Olberic summons his own party to battle. Both parties duel it out, and Olberic's party emerges victorious, defeating the notorious bounty hunter. Acknowledging his own defeat, Victorino gives up his seat in the Warriors' Tourney to Olberic. With much excitement, Olberic, Ned, Cecily, and the rest of the party enter the arena to begin the introductory phase of the Warriors' Tourney, where our barker announces all 8 champions. Archibald, the Crusher, Joshua Frostblade, Conrad, the Impaler, Wallace Wildsword, Bernhard, the Beast Hunter, Grieg, the Unbreakable, Gustav, the Black Knight, and Sir Olberic Eisenberg, the Unbending Blade. After the introductions conclude, Olberic is met by Gustav in the main hall. Gustav tells Olberic that he already knows why he's here. Olberic wishes to find Erhardt. Gustav tells Olberic that the information he desires has a cost. He then questions Olberic as to why he wields his blade, and Olberic is befuddled, unsure of how to answer, though Gustav apparently does not wish to have an answer at this time, saying that he will see Olberic in the finals. After this discussion, the first set of matches begin, with Olberic being paired up against Joshua Frostblade of Northreach. The 2 warriors greet each other honorably, and Joshua announces that he must win this duel for the sake of the love of his life, Angela. Olberic takes intrigue at the fact that this man fights for love in a woman, and then their duel begins. And I kinda have to stop and make a little bit of a gripe here. This is a warrior's tourney. It's supposed to be about one warrior demonstrating his strength and might over another warrior. But yet in these battles in the warrior's tourney, you have a full party against another warrior who has his own party. I think it would have been far more effective from a storytelling standpoint and just from a standpoint of pure badassery if Olberic had to take on all these matches by himself. Just saying. Joshua Frostblade proves to be a formidable opponent, but he ultimately falls to Olberic and his party. For the second set of matches, Olberic is paired up against the reigning champion, Archibald, the Crusher. Cecily and Ned warn Olberic about Archibald's iron will and the fact that that is what has won him so many battles so far. Olberic takes their advice under, advisement, and heads out into the arena to face off against the reigning king. After greeting each other on the battlefield, Archibald announces that his father was once the reigning king of the Warriors' Tourney, and that he was very close to winning 5 tourneys in a row before another swordsman's blade found his breast. So, to honor his father, Archibald announces that he was to win 5 tourneys in a row so that he may surpass his father. And this is his 5th tourney, and he does not plan on losing. And with that, the two parties engage in battle. Archibald proves to be an extremely resilient opponent, as he's able to withstand multiple strikes from Olberic's party without so much as flinching. However, with a little divine assistance from Bran the Thunderblade, Olberic brings Archibald to his knees. Archibald tells Olberic to rejoice while he can, as he will be returning next time to take the crown from him, and then yields. Returning to the main hall, Cecily is very excited that she has a warrior that made it to the final round, and has a very good chance of becoming the reigning king of the Warriors' Tourney. Olberic knows that his next fight against Gustav is going to be a very trying one, and so he tells Cecily that if the gods will that he is to be defeated, then so be it. And so Olberic marches out into the arena to meet Gustav. Gustav is pleased to see that Olberic made it to the final as he is anticipated, and he asks Olberic if he's found the answer as to why he swings his blade. Olberic thinks back to the fighters that he has bested in this tourney. Joshua fought for love, Archibald fought for the honor of his father, and Olberic once fought for liege and country, but those two are no longer a part of this world. So, at least for today, Olberic decides that he fights for victory. Pleased to see that Olberic has found a purpose worth fighting for, the two engage in battle. Olberic and party find that Gustav's defenses and iron will are even stronger than Archibald's, and the battle is long and hard fought, but eventually they eke out a victory. With Olberic victorious as the new king of the Warriors' Tourney, Gustav tells Olberic to meet him at the inn once he's done. After taking in the admiring praise of the crowd, Olberic proceeds to the inn, where he has a private meeting with Gustav. Gustav tells Olberic to make himself comfortable, as this is going to be a long discussion. Gustav opens up the conversation by asking Olberic if he's familiar with Erhardt's hometown of Grind. Olberic says that he remembers Erhardt talking about it in passing and that Grind was just a small border town in Hornburg. Well, as it turns out, there's a very good reason why Erhardt never spoke of his hometown much, and that's because it was destroyed when he was very young. Grind got caught up in a war that was taking place in the local region, and it was razed by the invading force. Displaced from his home, Erhardt found himself in a band of sellswords for a time, the very same sellswords that would end up destroying the Kingdom of Hornburg. With support from the leader of these sellswords, Erhardt was pressured to return to Hornburg as a spy. Erhardt resolved to kill King Alfred for the alleged crime in his mind of sitting on his ass while Grind burned. Olberic is appalled to hear the news that Erhardt had planned to betray the crown the entire time. Gustav retorts, asserting that this is the truth, but that he does not know exactly how Erhardt felt once he performed the deed. And while he knows that revenge is sweeter with the passage of time, Erhardt never spoke much of what he felt afterwards. And thus Gustav comes to the conclusion that if there is anybody in Orstera that he may speak the truth to about how he felt after he killed King Alfred, it would be Olberic. Gustav then laments that the inevitable altercation between Olberic and Erhardt will end up resulting in Erhardt's death, the death of his mentor, and a surrogate brother. He recognizes that if it is time for Erhardt to be judged by the actions of his past, then so be it, though he implores Olberic to listen to what he has to say before they fight. Olberic promises Gustav that he will at least hear what Erhardt has to say before they duel, which brings some level of content to Gustav in his mind. Gustav then tells Olberic to find Erhardt in the desert town of Wellspring in the Sunlands. Olberic thanks Gustav for his information and his time, and then begins to proceed on his way to Wellspring. However, just before he leaves Victor's Hollow, he is stopped by Ned and Cecily. Cecily has come to wish Olberic Godspeed, though she does not wish for him to leave and offers him a position as a full-time warrior under her employ. Olberic declines the offer, saying that he has business in Wellspring and that he must go now. Respecting his decision, Ned and Cecily bid Olberic farewell, and Olberic sets out towards the Sunlands to Wellspring.
Draw your blade, Erhardt.
You don't have to do this, Olberic.
Arriving in the desert oasis town of Wellspring, Olberic begins his search for Erhardt by questioning the various citizens. Everyone Olberic asks knows of Erhardt and his deeds, such as stopping a caravan from being raided by the local lizard men, but no one seems to know where he takes up residence, or what his current location is. After making 3 rounds of inquiry, Olberic is eventually stopped by the city guard, who decide to bring him to the jailhouse to question him as to why he's searching for Erhardt. Olberic follows the guards to the jailhouse, where he explains that he merely just has business with Erhardt and he is also of Hornburg. Upon hearing this explanation, any confusion that the city guards had that he may have had ill intent are lifted. And then the captain of the city guard, Captain Bale, arrives to speak with Olberic in person. Bale explains to Olberic that he is the reason that Erhardt has been residing around Wellspring for the past few years. Bale was introduced to Erhardt as he was defending a caravan from the local lizardmen, and all hope seemed to be lost and the caravan was doomed, until Erhardt showed up on the scene and defeated the lizardmen. From that day, Captain Bale has hired Erhardt as a sort of local mercenary to help with security. Olberic is intrigued that Erhardt has found renewed purpose defending Wellspring, much as he found some renewed purpose in defending Cobbleston. But Captain Bale begins to question Olberic about what his business with Erhardt is, that he may feel comfortable enough in telling him his exact location. Partially concealing the truth, Olberic assures Bale that there is no ill intent to be had here, and that he just merely wishes to speak with Erhardt. Bale is relieved to hear this, and he is about to give the location of Erhardt when Wellspring comes under attack by lizardmen. The guards inform Bale that Erhardt has went into the lizardmen's den and is trying to fight off their numbers single-handedly, while the rest of the lizardmen are about to attack the town. Olberic agrees to lend his aid to Bale to fend off the lizardmen, and they go to battle on the western edge of town. Olberic and party fend off multiple waves of lizardmen before they give up and retreat back to their den. Bale orders his men to fortify their defenses, and Olberic sees an opportunity. Olberic informs Bale that he is headed to the lizardmen den alone to back up Erhardt and see if they can put an end to the lizardmen threat once and for all. Bale wishes Olberic Godspeed, and Olberic heads to the lizardmen's den. Towards the back of the den, Olberic finds Erhardt fending off a horde of lizardmen all by himself. Olberic rushes to Erhardt's side to protect him from a back attack, and the two fight together to fend off the horde. After killing the lizardmen surrounding them, a roar is heard in the distance from two lizardmen chieftains, one from the left and one from the right. Olberic agrees to kill the chieftain on the right while Erhardt seeks the one on the left. Olberic confronts the lizardman chieftain on the right, and he once again reflects on why he wields his blade. Recalling his experiences throughout this journey, Olberic finally comes to the conclusion that he may no longer have a king or countryman to defend, or even a realm to defend, but now his blade can be used to serve and protect the weak and the innocent, and thus he goes to battle with the Lizardman Chief. The Lizardman Chief proves to be a cunning adversary, but is no match for the power of the Unbending Blade. Once the chieftain falls, Olberic returns to where he met Erhardt, and Erhardt has finished killing the chieftain on his side. With the Lizardman threat vanquished, Erhardt and Olberic can finally have an honest conversation about what's happened in their past. Erhardt comes completely clean about swearing revenge on King Alfred, killing him, and playing a part in the destruction of Hornburg. Erhardt paints a more graphic picture of what happened to his hometown of Grind. As a young child, he remembers the marauders coming into his village, killing all they saw and burning every building to the ground. But yet, as their doom befell them, the citizens of Grind believed that King Alfred would come and save them. However, the truth eventually became apparent. King Alfred sent no help. Whether it was willingly or because he didn't know, Erhardt still held that against him. The crime of doing nothing. Continuing his story, Erhardt corroborates what Gustav was saying, that a band of sellswords picked him up after Grind was destroyed. Erhardt served with the sellswords for a time until the boss of these sellswords approached him, giving him the opportunity to exact his revenge and bring about the downfall of Hornburg. Erhardt accepted this offer with zero hesitation, and so, to enact his plan, Erhardt returned to Hornburg. He became a knight, began his training, worked his way up the ranks, and eventually found himself in the position of King Alfred's retainer alongside Olberic. And then Erhardt bided his time until that fateful day where he killed King Alfred and defeated Olberic in single combat. However, after he performed the deed, he felt no satisfaction at all. As a matter of fact, he ended up regretting killing King Alfred. He returned to the sellswords after the fall of Hornburg, but the boss of the sellswords disbanded them very shortly afterwards for reasons unknown. And so Erhardt was left purposeless, masterless, and he roamed town to town, joined a mercenary band where he met Gaston and Gustav for a short time, and then eventually found his way to Wellspring, where he ended up becoming their protector. However, despite finding renewed purpose, Erhardt every day is still tortured by the actions of his past, as he longs for the memories that he lost, the proving grounds, the practice yards, the jousting lists, fighting honorable battles alongside of Olberic and his other knights. He misses those times. but they are times that he cannot have back, because of his own hands. Erhardt then becomes solemn, and a silence ensues. After many moments, Olberic finally breaks the silence.
Draw your blade, Erhardt.
You don't have to do this, Olberic.
I can end it for you. All of it. Your anger, your pain, your regret, this lie your life has become. I'll cut you down and give you the peace you seek. My king dead, and my countrymen. What did that make me, who had sworn my very life to protect them? For what did I wield my sword? Gods, how many years did that question plague me? But at long last, I understood. I never lost my worth. Like you, I bear my sword so that I may protect others. Erhardt, I cannot stand here, pretend to understand what caused you to do as you did. And though I search my heart, I find no room there for forgiveness. I find only... I should have bested you that day. Victory should have been mine. Then, and only then, could I have saved our liege. And you, from the monster you would become. Hear me, Erhardt. This time, I will not lose. Draw your weapon, Erhardt. For warriors such as us, there is no other way. So be it. In victory, truth!
And so, Olberic and Erhardt go to battle with Olberic's goal to best Erhardt and finally put to rest the cycle of grief that has stricken both of their souls. Olberic demonstrates the newfound strength that he has found on his journey and bests Erhardt. Erhardt yields, with Olberic sparing his life. Now, with all of the grief and regret in their hearts removed, they can now resume their lives as normal men. But Olberic realizes there's still one loose end that remains to be tied up. Olberic asks Erhardt, who is the man that was the leader of the sellswords, the man behind Hornburg's downfall, the mastermind? Erhardt is initially reluctant to answer, but Olberic convinces him that a man whose very existence is to plot the destruction of kingdoms cannot be allowed to roam free. There's no telling which kingdom would be destroyed next. Erhardt concedes, and reveals that the man's name was Werner, and that Olberic may find him in the city of Riverford, in the Riverlands. With their friendship restored, Olberic and Erhardt proceed outside, where they are greeted by Captain Bale and the city guard. Captain Bale invites Olberic to stay in Wellspring, but Olberic declines, saying that he needs to go on other business. Olberic does not think to invite Erhardt with him to go to Riverford, as he knows that Wellspring needs him. However, before walking away, Erhardt warns Olberic that Werner is a very fierce man, and that his very presence strikes fear into the hearts of men. But Erhardt is confident that if there's one man in all of Orstera that can match him, it is Olberic. And so, with his mission made clear, Olberic sets out for Riverford to confront Werner, the man who destroyed his home.
That's enough, Werner. Your villainy ends here.
It takes Olberic and party many days and many nights to travel from Wellspring and through the necessary routes to get to the Riverlands where Riverford is. And upon arrival, they are all met by a grisly sight. At Riverford's entrance, there is a queue where everyone is inspected by the city guard, and that there is an artificial toll placed to enter the city. All you must do is to press a few leaves into their pockets and they'll let you in. As Olberic and party await their turn, they notice one merchant attempting to enter the city who is falsely accused of being a smuggler and escorted to the gallows. Taking the advice of the merchant in front of him, Olberic slips a few leaves into the guard's pockets, and they allow him entry. After entering the city gates, Olberic and Cyrus have a brief conversation about the state of Riverford. Both men comment that with the state of the city guard as it is now, it will be difficult to get at Werner, and so Olberic looks to Cyrus for his scholar-like wisdom. Cyrus proposes seeking out a possible local resistance that may be in Riverford, as oppressive regimes tend to give way to dissatisfaction and ill content. so more than likely there will be some citizens that are trying to take action against Werner. Olberic agrees to heed Cyrus's counsel and begins to search the town. However, Olberic does not have to search long before he casts his gaze at the most horrific sight of Riverford, a set of pyres. A local resident approaches Olberic and explains the purpose of the pyres. Once a month, 4 people are taken from the gallows and burned at the stake publicly, much to the terror of everyone watching. Originally, those who were burned were criminals, scoundrels, the worst scum of humanity that you could think of. However, a city can only harbor so many smugglers, murderers, thieves, so when Riverford was wiped clean of them, now all it took as a crime was to speak badly of Lord Werner, or even so much as being accused of doing something to end up in the gallows and be burned at the pyres. Now, I want everybody to stop and think about how horrific a concept this really is. I mean, could you all imagine what our modern society would be like if all it took for you to be put to death publicly was someone just accusing you of something and there's no verifiable evidence to prove it and you're just taken away and killed? This disturbed me to such a point that I actually had to stop playing for a couple minutes. And I'm a pretty desensitized individual, and for something like this in a video game and the way it was written to just stop me like that and horrify me, that tells you something. I was just shocked. But it's also moments like this that make me love Olberic's story all the more. And it's also why it's one of my favorite stories in the game. But anyway, I'm digressing. I would like to get back on track now. So after explaining what goes on at the pyres monthly, the resident speaking with Olberic walks away, but Olberic believes there's more to the man and decides to follow him. While pursuing the man, Olberic stops to have a brief conversation with Ophelia, who is appalled by this monthly ritual. She insists that they need to do something about it immediately. Consequences be damned. However, Olberic asserts that they have to stand by and watch for now as they formulate a plan to take on Werner, as he will not be an easy foe to strike down. Ophelia disagrees that it is wrong to allow this injustice to carry on, but Olberic eventually convinces her that they need to stay the course and formulate a plan to take down such a dangerous man. As Olberic continues his search, he ends up in a back alleyway where that same man from earlier comes by and tells Olberic to pretend like he never saw him. The reason? He's being chased by city guards on the charge of being a rebel. Olberic lies to the city guards and sends them in the wrong direction. Speaking with the man, Olberic surmises that he's part of the local resistance, and the man says he is. Olberic demands to see their leader at once, but the man makes a counter proposition. Duel with their strongest fighter, and if Olberic wins, then he can meet the leader of the resistance. Olberic agrees, and he ends up dueling with a man in a red cap in the town square to prove his worth. After defeating the man in the red cap, the man who was being chased by the guards earlier introduces himself as Reggie, and takes him to the leader of the resistance, a man named Harald. Harald immediately reveals that he knows who Olberic is, as he received a letter from Captain Bale informing that he was coming. Harald then proceeds to speak about Werner and his past as it pertains to when he arrived in Riverford and how he became the Lord. Apparently, Werner arrived some years ago, claiming noble blood and challenging the Lord of Riverford for his position. He accused the Lord of Riverford of pillage and larceny, and won the support of common folk and criminal alike. Werner stirred up the residents so much that they started an insurrection against the Lord of Riverford, kicking him out and installing Werner as the new Lord. And the moment Werner became Lord, he immediately began the ritual of burning people at the pyres monthly. Since then, the citizens of Riverford have lived in terror that at any moment an accusation could be thrown against them and they're burned at the stake. Their only survival now is in silence. Harald, however, opposes Werner's rule, as he is the son of the outcast Lord of Riverford, and he wishes to restore law and order and peace to the city. And it is then that Harald asks Olberic for his blade to help them take back the city. Olberic agrees to help the resistance without hesitation, and Harald reveals their plan. A small contingent of resistance fighters will start a diversion in the town square, while the main contingent of their force will go through the sewers that connect to the Lord's Manse. Once inside the Lord's Manse, the resistance soldiers will then act as a strike force and assassinate Werner. Olberic retorts that the plan is sound, and that he is ready whenever the resistance is. After some last-minute preparations, the resistance begins their operation. In the town square, the resistance begins their diversionary feint, while Harald leads his strike team, with Olberic included, into the sewers. The sewers are lightly guarded, as expected, and everything appears to be in order as they come upon the entrance to the Lord's Manse underground. However, as Harald takes one last moment to rally the troops before entering the Lord's Manse, disaster strikes. The Resistance all of a sudden finds themselves in the middle of an ambush led by Lord Werner himself. Werner tells Harald that the moment he saw the fight in the town square, he knew immediately it was a distraction, and he's already sent soldiers to quell it while he deals personally with the Resistance. Harald then proceeds to call out Werner for the worthless and honorless cur that he is, though Werner immediately turns around and tells his archers to fire. Olberic does what he can to shield the members of the Resistance from the volleys of arrows that come their way, but he is only successful in defending a few of them, including Harald. As member after member of the Resistance falls under Werner's assault, Olberic is shaken with a great fear. Olberic finds himself unable to move, and scared that this will once again be like the fall of Hornburg, where he is forced to watch and do nothing, as everybody around him dies. Olberic is then shaken out of his trance by Harald, who ends up taking a direct arrow to the shoulder to protect him. With Harald injured, Olberic curses his situation, and Werner comes to the front and recognizes Olberic as the Unbending Blade of Hornburg, though he proceeds to tease Olberic on what his sovereignty is, considering that it no longer exists. At this point, all of the Resistance strike force are either dead or injured, and Olberic's quest for truth and vengeance is about to meet an abrupt end. All hope seems to be lost, but the pale of tension pervading this battlefield is immediately cut by a familiar voice.
Aye, he has the right of it. We'll protect them. Together.
In an unexpected turn of events, Erhardt, the blazing sword of Hornburg, has arrived to Olberic's aid, and the twin blades of Hornburg fight once more. And within 1 minute, the entire tide of the battle changes as Lord Werner's men are quaking in their boots and wishing to retreat. Werner kills one of his archers as an example to the rest of his soldiers not to run, lest they fear the wrath of his blade. Fearing their lord more than the twin blades of Hornburg, which is foolish mind you, the rest remain to fight while Werner retreats to call for more reinforcements. Erhardt tells Olberic to pursue Werner before he can call in for more help, and Erhardt will handle the rest of his soldiers. Olberic thanks Erhardt for his assistance and begins his pursuit. Legions of Werner's veteran soldiers still stand between Olberic and him. However, after many battles through the Lord's Manse, Olberic eventually arrives at Werner's quarters. When Olberic confronts Werner, Werner criticizes Olberic's use of his blade to protect paupers and peasants, and that he could find himself a more worthy cause. And thus, Werner makes Olberic an offer. Join him as the captain of his guard, and he will forgive his trespasses. Olberic declines Werner's offer immediately, saying that he would slay 100 tyrants like him before the blood of an innocent would be spilled on his watch. Werner, despite being rebuffed, continues his ideological attack on Olberic, chastising him, saying that despite the fact that Olberic's blade is unbending, the man did break. Olberic then does slightly concede, saying that there was a point that yes, his soul did break, but that he has learned something new on this journey. He recites his renewed oath that he made in Wellspring while fighting the Lizardman chieftain, that his blade, though it lost its liege and its kingdom that it defended, that he would use his blade to protect the weak and the innocent, especially from tyrants like Werner. Werner eventually tires of this debate and draws his sword to prepare for battle with Olberic. However, rather than jumping into battle immediately, Olberic takes the time to verbally tear down Werner one last time.
You are deaf to reason because you have nothing of substance to protect. And so, it falls to my sword to speak the truth!
And with this exchange, Olberic and his party proceed into battle against Werner, who fights them alone. And the party finds, just as Erhardt warned, Werner's very presence in battle strikes fear into their hearts, and they find themselves unable to use some of their strongest abilities as a result. However, Olberic and friends remain steadfast against the Tyrant, and eventually he is toppled. Having been defeated and badly injured, Olberic demands that before he dies, that he will tell him why he destroyed Hornburg. Werner replies with a single name, the Gate of Finis. He then adds that the Gate of Finis is in Hornburg, and that he wished to claim it as his own. Olberic then immediately chastises Werner for sending countless multitudes of men to their deaths and destroying an entire kingdom for just a simple gate. Werner then replies that every man sees the worth of nations and men in different measure, and that pursuing the Gate of Finis was a venture worth taking. Werner then stands and readies his sword once more, but not for battle, but to commit suicide. Werner then takes a brief moment to spit on Olberic's precious justice and tells him to rot in hell as he impales himself. Werner laughs maniacally as he meets his end. From here, 3 days then pass since Werner's death, and the Resistance's uprising is successful and Harald is installed as the new Lord of Riverford. Olberic and Erhardt have remained in Riverford to oversee the transition of power, and they are eventually visited by Reggie. Olberic thanks Reggie for his help, but then questions how Erhardt knew exactly where to find him. Erhardt then explains he came to Riverford to help Olberic on his quest for justice, and that he ran into Reggie, who ended up pointing him in the right direction. Both Blades of Hornburg end up thanking Reggie, and then he informs them that Harald is already implementing new policies to undo Werner's damage. The first of these policies is the demolition of the pyres in the town square. No longer will a monthly ritual of terror be held there. With their work now completed, both Olberic and Erhardt return home, but not to Hornburg, but to the towns that need them, Cobbleston and Wellspring. After a journey lasting many days, Olberic finally arrives home in Cobbleston. However, no sooner does he enter the town than he is once again back attacked by Philip. Olberic quickly deflects the blow and comments that Philip has once again become stronger and swings a heavier blade, and faster too. Philip is pleased by Olberic's compliments and then proceeds to round up the rest of the town for a welcome home party for Olberic. However, still one thing remains on Olberic's mind from this journey, and that's the words left behind by Werner right before he died. Talk of the Gate of Finis, and how different men hold the values of men and nations in different measure. However, Olberic ends up dismissing these thoughts for the time being, as he is now home, where he belongs, with renewed purpose. And it is here that Olberic's story ends. But with the conclusion of Olberic's story, we get the answer to a major question that was left behind by both Ophelia and Cyrus's stories, which is, what and where is the gate that was on the mural in the ruins of Eld and the one that Archbishop Joseph spoke of? We have now identified it as the Gate of Finis, the gate to the afterworld, and it is located in the ruins of Hornburg. But a much vexing question still remains. Werner reached the Gate of Finis, but he did not open it, and he left it behind in favor of becoming Lord of Riverford. Why is this? I have one explanation for why, and that is, he did not have the tome from the far reaches of hell in his possession, as that is one known way to open the gate. But I hypothesize that there is a secondary way you can open the gate, based on the information that's been provided so far, and it involves a certain set of magical stones, the Dragon Stones specifically. They may partially hold the key to opening the gate as well, but those are a story for another time. And with that brings us to the conclusion of today's lore video on Olberic Eisenberg, the Unbending Blade. Now, I already said at the beginning of this video that this is one of my favorite stories in Octopath Traveler, so I tried my best here to give some personal takes throughout the story because I feel like Olberic deserves it. So, with that, I think it's time to leave today's video here. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to give it a thumbs up down below. If you disliked it, show it to your enemies. If you feel strongly enough, put a comment down below and share it with your friends. If you haven't done so already, make sure you're subscribed to the channel to stay up to date on the newest uploads. And finally, if you're so willing, make sure you take a moment to check out my Patreon page, link in the description below. I am currently seeking out people who are willing and able to become my patrons and support this lore series. If you believe strongly in what I am doing here with these lore videos, I encourage you to become my patron today. Any help that you can provide is greatly appreciated. And with that, today's lore video is adjourned. Thank you so much for watching. I will catch you all next time.